Most people in the UK are handing over 40 to 45% of what they earn in tax every single month. Meanwhile, property investors with 10, 20, 30 properties are paying legally next to nothing in tax. And no, I'm not talking about some dodgy offshore scheme. I'm talking about something that's been used by property investors for decades. And the only difference is they know how to play the game where you don't. So in this video, I'm going to break down the strategy that I've used and thousands of other property investors have used to legally avoid giving half of your income away to the taxman. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to show you a real deal that is in my portfolio that I pulled out money, tax-free, and reinvested into another deal afterwards. Quick disclaimer, this is not financial advice. I'm not an accountant, I'm not a financial advisor. I just have 10 years of experience within property where I've learned a lot and I want to pass that on. Always speak to a qualified professional before making financial decisions. Here's something no one tells you at school. You never learn financial advice at school, and I think it's vital. Your salary, or the traditional salary, is one of the most taxed forms of income. You get over £50,000 worth of income and you are taxed at around 40%. It's massive. For you to work 4 weeks of the month and for just under 2 weeks of it to be working for the taxman is mental. You pay national insurance, you pay things like council tax, you pay value-added tax on everything you buy, and then eventually when you actually die, 40% of it goes to inheritance tax. The tax system in the UK at the moment is brutal. And we have to find ways of playing the game so you keep your hard-earned cash. Tax thresholds have been kept the same for years, whilst inflation pushes wages up and naturally pushes you into those higher tax brackets. And all that ends up happening is you just get taxed more, you don't get richer. Stealth tax is one of the worst taxes I know. Wages over the last 20 years have gone up by about 100%, yet the tax brackets have barely moved. So you are paying more tax than you ever have just to keep up with the basic living cost. Now, I'm not saying this just to wind you up or for you to go quit your job today, which is the last thing that I actually ever want. But here's the key. I want to teach you what wealthy people do. So you earn your salary, you work very hard, and you manage to keep some of your savings. You put your savings in what you think is a safe place, in a bank, in a high interest savings account. But if that high interest savings account isn't giving you enough, inflation is eroding that cash away, and you're working hard, not quite for nothing, but what it probably feels like. What I want to teach you today is how to maximize those savings and avoid paying loads of tax. So, what do wealthy people do differently to your average person? Wealthy people don't earn their way to being rich. They invest their way to being rich. They buy assets. The assets pay for liabilities. It's a bit of a corny cliche, but it's worked, and it has worked for hundreds and hundreds of years. When you earn a salary, you get taxed at source. It gets taken off by your employer effectively and paid to the taxman, but you have no choice about it. You earn your money, it gets taken off at source, you get whatever's left over basically. And when you own an asset like property and it goes up in value year on year, you don't pay tax until you crystallize that asset, until you sell that asset down the line. And guess what? Wealthy people never sell. Warren Buffett, one of the richest investors of all time, never ever sells. He holds, and he holds forever. But there's a part of this, and there's a bit for this in property. They hold, they let the asset grow, and they use this strategy, which I'm about to show you, to never pay a penny in tax. And I'm going to break this down for you right now. But the best part is you don't need to quit your job. You don't need to become a full-time investor. You don't need to throw the towel in. You can build this asset base alongside your career. And if anything, having a stable job is something that I really promote and something that I think is really important and something that can even help you get lending and grow your portfolio quicker. I did exactly that. I started in property when I had what was the most ridiculous investment in my life, buying a cafe and being involved in a cafe. But I was running the cafe, getting some income, and that's when I decided that I want to build my property portfolio. And I would recommend it to anyone to stay in their job for as long as possible to build their property portfolio out. Property is an investment, it is not a cash flow strategy. However, the cash flow is a bonus, but it really should be thought as an investment strategy, and that's how it will change your life. So let me show you exactly how it works. The strategy is quite simple. Buy, borrow, repeat. Also could be known as BRRR, buy, refurbish, refinance, repeat. So you take your savings, you've worked really hard, and you've managed to create £30,000 of savings in an interest account. So we're going to look at properties of around £100,000. Now, you're thinking that's not quite, the maths doesn't quite work there, Si, you've been a bit silly. But we don't need the whole money to buy or invest in a property. We can look at a property 80 to £100,000 with that amount of savings, we're going to borrow 75% of that property's value from the bank. There are banks that give us buy-to-let mortgages. They will say, yep, there you go, Mr. Fruin, you can have 75% of the house's value. So this is what we call leverage. Your money is working 100 times harder being invested in that property with the bank's help than it is just being sat in a savings account working at maybe 4 or 5% per annum. So you rent that property out, the tenant pays the rent, it pays off your mortgage interest, pays off some management fees, hopefully some maintenance, and then a little bit left over. So you're making a little bit of profit. The extra cash flows are great, but that isn't what makes you rich. What makes you wealthy is what happens next. Part 2. Let's say you bought the property for £100,000. You keep hold of it for a few years, you do a bit of maintenance and work, you give it a new kitchen, a new bathroom, a lick of paint, it goes up in value. So you go up to £130,000, £140,000. Most people think, great, I've managed to make £40,000 profit, I'll sell it. I'll have that profit, be great. But if you sell, what happens? You pay tax, you pay capital gains tax potentially on that property, or corporation tax, one of the many taxes that are involved. Either way, the government is going to take a chunk of the profit when you sell. So wealthy people do not sell. We refinance. So you go back to the bank and you say, my property is now worth £140,000. And they say, well, we'll give you 75% of that value. So we'll give you £105,000. So you pay off your old mortgage, which is £75,000 that we originally borrowed from the bank when it was worth 100 at 75% loan to value. And you are left with £30,000 in your bank account from the bank, tax free. Why is it tax free? It's not income. It's not profit, it's borrowed money. You've taken a loan against the asset that you own, and borrowing money is not a taxable event in the UK. So you've pulled your original deposit out effectively, that the savings that were sat in your bank account that were doing very little, you've managed to buy a property, it's now giving you cash flow, it's going up in value each year, and you've pulled out that original amount to start with as well a few years on. So you can do it all over again. So what do? Is step 3 of this. We repeat what we did in step 1. That's the game. You take that 30 grand that you had originally, you go buy another property, you hold it, you let it grow, you add some value, you refinance it, you pull it back out again, and we go again. Meanwhile, we are still not paying any tax within our company on that money that we are using. So every time that you do this, your portfolio grows, your equity grows, your tenants are paying the debt down on the asset that you own, and you haven't paid any tax on it because you haven't sold anything. Meanwhile, you're still going back to work, you're still earning your salary, getting taxed a little bit too much, you're living your normal life, and your portfolio is growing lovely in the background. It's growing nicely without you doing very much. And that is fundamentally what the millionaires do, what the top 1% do. They have these assets that are earning them money while they do very little. So let me tell you about a little property that I bought, one of the best deals I've ever bought. We've bought lots of these since and we really enjoy them, but property in Wakefield near where I live, we bought it, it'd fallen out of auction, we bought it at £90,000. We spent around £27,000 doing it up, and we managed to get it revalued at £145,000. So we pulled out our initial deposit, we bought it with a bridging loan with a type of finance, we then got it refinanced, we pulled out the initial deposit, we get about £900 a month rent on that, so we're making anything from £300 to £400 profit. And I've used that money that we originally got from the original deposit that I used, we pulled it back out, tax-free, we've reinvested it. We've actually bought 2 properties using that pot of cash since. We continue to keep doing this model and we rinse and repeat it. I didn't quit my job to do this. I didn't need £100,000. I just followed a very simple system and I rinsed and repeated the model over and over again. I often get asked at these points like, Si, but you're racking up loads of debt, you've got loads of mortgages and you're borrowing lots of money. There is a big difference between good debt and bad debt. We've got bad debts such as credit cards and car finance, buying things that to impress people that we don't need. Good debt, we get a return on that money. So we might be borrowing from the bank at 4 and 5% per year, but we are getting a return on our money that is anything from 15 to 20% per year when we factor in capital growth and rental income. The goal isn't always to be debt-free in life. It's something that is, I think, misconstrued or certainly missold as we go up. The goal is to be asset rich. Those assets give you an income that pay for your liabilities and your debts. The more assets we can have, the more liabilities, holidays, cars, fancy electrical stuff we can get. once we've got those assets first. Si, I haven't got enough money to start. Get this all the time. It's something that we're really trying to help with inside Property Academy at the moment. If you have got 20 to 50,000 pound in the bank, you have got enough money to start. We can help teach you and show you how to get started with that amount of money. We've got enough for a deposit. We can learn how to find great deals that we can buy at discount. We can learn how to refinance and use banking finance, and we can start building our property portfolio with that amount of money that we've just mentioned. What I've explained here is quite high level and overly simplistic at times, and you've probably still got loads of questions. And if you have, click on the link somewhere in the bio, book a call with me and my team, and we'll explain this strategy and how we can help you go forward in property. And I'll see you in the next video.